140 miles north of London is Bentwaters, England. In December of 1980, a United States Air Force base armed with nuclear weapons was reportedly the site of a series of UFO encounters over a 3-day period.
There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears that he may be moving a little bit this way. Yes, it's brighter than it has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way.
Responding to reports of a possible downed aircraft, 3 patrolmen were sent out to Rendlesham Forest to investigate. Airman First Class Edward Cabanzag was one of the security officers present.
That night, we were on Security 1, which was in charge of mobile security for the Woodbridge base, and we responded to Jim Burroughs' sighting of something out on the edge of the flight line.
Well, the controller on the radio broadcast over the air that go down and check out a possible UFO.
Another security officer present was Airman First Class John Burroughs.
So it was like me, it was Peniston, me, and then Cabanzag to my right.
It was apparent that it wasn't an aircraft crash. We knew that much.
Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston was sent down to lead Burroughs and Cabanzag to investigate the object.
There was a craft of some sort that was sitting just inside the tree line.
As the 3 officers approached the alleged crash site, it became obvious that it wasn't what they were prepared for.
Burroughs would say to Jim Peniston, "Do you see that? Do you see what's out there at the edge of the trees?"
It was just bright lights, you know, and the only way you can describe it is, I guess you'd call it an object.
At that point in time, 3 of us had direct observation of the craft.
The closer we would get to it, we would lose communication, you know, with Central Security Control.
Cabanzag was sent back towards the base to help transmit radio communications between the other 2 officers, who went further to investigate.
The only noise we heard out in the woods was the noise of the animals.
Just as Burroughs and I entered the tree line, the shape of the craft was defined. The closer we got, the more the white light dissipated, but what appeared was a triangular craft. When we approached it, it was, I say it measured probably about 9 feet long, maybe 6 feet high, a little higher, maybe 6.5 feet. The lighting emanated from the fabric of the craft, and it would actually move around. I mean, it would move. You'd have different locations where maybe a little blue lighting was going into it, or maybe a little red. And then there must have been some type of lighting underneath of it, because it silhouetted the aircraft itself. What I did that night is I had my notebook with me. I went around and started doing a 360 walk around the area, recording my observations. I was looking underneath the craft like that. I had taken quite detailed notes on that. Type of aircraft still unknown. No apparent landing gear. No sound, but appears to be pulsating somehow.
Yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I mean, there's something there right in front of you, you don't know what it is.
I would go ahead and feel the craft, which was warm. There was static electricity in the air. Very warm to touch. Identifying markings are on left front side. As I came around to the one side of the craft, there was etching on the facing me just above the center part of the craft itself. Of course, this is done all freehand as I was walking around the craft, but these symbols ran from left to right across, and then underneath that line of symbols was this, which is triangular, and some type of circle here, some type of circle here, and a larger circle here. And of course, all this was filled in with the etching part of it, like you had etched glass. So those symbols were raised, and they had a different feel than the rest of the fabric of the craft. Liftoff occurred at 2:45 with no sound, no air disturbance, and no other identifying markings. Myself and at that time Burroughs, we were at a fairly good distance, maybe 30 feet away from it, and we had taken a defensive position on the ground.
I mean, it was threatening to me, but it wasn't the type that you were going to shoot on it. And also the fact was that, what would happen if I would have shot at him? What good would it have done?
And then it started moving back in between the trees with absolutely no sound, no air disturbance at all.
Whatever it was went up and shot back up out over the trees, just like he was there and was gone.
Takeoff, unknown speed, and I write, impossible.
Details of this sighting were first made public when this Air Force memo was obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. It states, "The object was described as being triangular in shape, approximately 2 to 3 meters across the base and approximately 2 meters high. It had a red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath. As the patrolman approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared." This Air Force memo was written by Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt. General Gordon Williams, who was commander of the base at the time, denies either seeing or authorizing the release of this memo. In a tape recording presented to General Williams, Airman Burroughs questions how a story of this magnitude could escape his oversight.
How did Colonel Halt's memo go up without you knowing about it and reviewing it and allowing it to happen? Anything that left that base that significant to a foreign government would have to be cleared by you.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I didn't. Let me ask that last part about that memo.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. That went under the door and I didn't see it. Now, did he have a motivation in doing that? Did he think that if he brought it into me, I would have stepped on it? I certainly would have looked at it very carefully because it had some things in there that I don't think we were prepared to defend.
Lieutenant Colonel Halt was most likely motivated to write this memo because he too was a witness to a second occurrence, as he himself states at the bottom of the document. Numerous individuals, including the undersigned, witnessed the activities. Signed, Charles I. Halt, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force. He captured the encounter on his pocket tape recorder.
Well, we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast. There's one on the right heading away too. Yeah, we're both heading north.
I believe that he went out there to debunk the whole situation, and I think he got in the middle of a situation he couldn't explain either.
Oh, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now.
He came toward us, it stopped overhead, and sent down a beam. Well, the beam wasn't like an ordinary beam of light that radiates out. It was a focus beam like a laser beam that illuminated the ground, a small circle probably 2 foot or so in diameter.
Well, we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
When I gave the tape that I made to my superior, he took and played it to 3rd Air Force, to the commander and the staff, and they all scratched their head, and the answer finally was, "It's a British affair, leave it to them, give it back to them." Hence, I wrote the memo that has become public.
I think that Halt was definitely wrong in doing that. Once that cat was out of the bag, you know, I couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and it lived its own life.
What did happen over a period of 3 days at Bentwaters? Did a UFO actually land at a U.S. air base in England?
That is one explanation, that it actually happened, as Colonel Halt reported. The other explanation is that it didn't. And in that case, one is bound to assume that Colonel Halt and all his men were hallucinating.
The British Ministry of Defence's position is that nothing that took place at Bentwaters was of any defense interest. This view is criticized by former Chief of the Defense Staff, Admiral Lord Hill Norton.
That the colonel of an American Air Force base in Suffolk and his merry men are hallucinating when there are nuclear-armed aircraft on the base must be of defense interest. If indeed what he says took place did take place, and why on earth should he make it up, then surely the entry of a vehicle from outer space, certainly not man-made, to a defense base in this country also cannot fail to be of defense interest.
The public position of the Ministry of Defence is that UFOs pose no threat to the defence of the realm. Well, I quite understand such statements, and indeed during my tour of duty I probably wrote statements like that.
From 1992 to 1995,